My name is Steve Brumer. I'm a partner and co-founder of 151 Advisors, and I'm so glad to see all of you here. This is our 6th year of doing the Absolutely series. We've been very lucky and happy to work with CTIA and being able to put this program together. You know how hard it is to sometimes get the right amount of people to come and do these kinds of things. We had over 2,500 people pre-register for the event. So we know there's an interest. It's just getting tushes into the seats to do those kinds of things. So thank you very much for attending and being part of what we're doing here today. I'm going to quick survey. How many people today in this room are making money in IoT? Making money in IoT. Okay, so how many people are involved in IoT in general? All right, great. Hardware? Software? Yeah. Services? Providing services. Great, excellent. So our intention today is not to be salesy. All right, so that you're going to learn stuff today. I know it's going to be interesting, but this is going to be a learning day, not a salesy day. And one of the great things about what we do, and if anybody has anybody been to one of our sessions or Absolutely sessions before? Great. So the ones that have know that we are a very interactive group. We don't stand on ceremony. If you have questions, blurt them out. Just raise your hand and let's go. We want this to be, when you walk away, we want you to have been happy, to have learned something, to have met new people and be a part of the program. So it's really important that that cooperation and that integration of everybody working together. It's amazing when you get people in the room that are trying to understand new things. Maybe there's someone sitting next to you that can provide you with that information. So please do whatever you can to involve yourself with the day and continue to be interactive. So I wanted to quickly tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So we are an international advisory consulting firm. Our whole goal is to help technology companies, whether they are building hardware products, providing software development services, all kinds of application developers. We help those companies bring to market their wares, however it wants to work, from an Amazon scenario to distribution to big box retailer, however it is necessary to bring your product to make money. You're going to find that theme being the case in a lot of things that we do today. It's all about revenue generation. I did a session yesterday on the show floor at the Startup Lab area, all about show me the money. It's amazing how many people are in startup mode here? Okay, so it's amazing looking at the idea of, we have to make money. We have to try and figure out how investors want to get paid back and how our friends and family want to get paid back in certain situations. So a lot of the theme that we do is around how to generate and solve issues related to generating revenue and providing more opportunities for the program that you built. So we work with early stage startups. We also work with large organizations on a worldwide basis. We have offices in Istanbul, London, Toronto, Far East, and then 5 offices in the United States. And conceptually, it's all about trying to find new ways in the IoT space to continue to grow the business overall. So if you look at some of the industries that we're seeing a lot of focus on, these are some of the groups, areas that we are working with clients on a worldwide basis and are bringing things to market in these industries and these technologies. We have really been our firm is 9 years old. I've been in wireless now, this is my 29th year. Yes, I started when I was 12. And if you look at the beginnings of the wireless industry, I started out in two-way radios back in the old 1980 something. And you look at data and look at where things have happened, and you look at the industries now that we're involved in, the IoT, M2M world, it has really not, it's still the same thing. When I was at the Wireless History Foundation dinner the other night, and I was talking to 3 gentlemen from Bell Labs who I know, who got inducted into the Hall of Fame, they started cellular services in the 70s, and it was amazing that half the audience wasn't old enough to understand what was going on. And I also saw my old dear friend, Marty Cooper. Who knows who Marty Cooper is in this room? Yay! He was the inventor of the first cellular phone. And I saw Marty, and we took a selfie, and I posted it, on my LinkedIn site and my Facebook page, and I said, tell me, who's this dude I'm standing next to? And I think I got 3 people that knew who it was. And it's interesting to see how this industry has changed dramatically in the area. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who I worked with to put the first Sierra Wireless modem inside a Coke machine in 1992. Functionally, the increased productivity and the efficiency of that Coke machine and what we were trying to do back in the early 90s is the same as it's now today. So machine to machine, IoT, conceptually it's still data. What can I do with that information and continue to go? So there's so much that has changed in this industry. There's so many great opportunities to grow and a lot of partnerships. One thing about IoT, and I was meeting with the president of NTT Docomo this morning, and the issues that we do a lot of work in China and Japan and clients there, and the concept is it's still confusing and hard for them too there. So it's the same situation of trying to be able to put all these parts together and be able to look at different areas that are going to be able to generate interest. I still have 3 pet peeves, and hopefully I'm not stealing James's thunder when he does his keynote, but there's still 3 pet peeves that I have within the IoT space, and maybe they're the same for you. One is education. There's a lack of education with customers and within the industry, and sometimes with carriers and people that are a part of the industry. We need to find a way to continue to educate our customers and general public. It's not just a Nest thermostat. There's so many people that just think that that's the IoT thing. And then they've also seen the, anybody from Cisco in here? Good. So they've seen the Internet of everything, this marketing whole spiel, and that doesn't really equate to what many of us in this room are doing. So education is important, and I spend as much time as I can on the road educating people. I was at Mobile World Congress in Shanghai a couple months ago, and they set up a day seminar on IoT in Shanghai, and I had 500 people in the room trying to understand the difference between IoT and M2M in the US and what they're doing in China. Let me tell you, it's very confusing. Imagine all of you in this room and 90% of you with headsets on. I've never done a speech where I had, out of 500 people in the room, 400 plus of them had headsets on. And I had no idea what that woman in the back was actually saying to them through their headsets. You couldn't be sarcastic, you couldn't cut a joke, you couldn't do anything. It was an interesting speech. But the concept is that so many people came up to me afterwards, were talking about the idea that the same problems that we have and challenges that we have in the US, they have there. So it's an interesting scenario. The second thing is security. We still have a lot to do with figuring out privacy issues, trying to control who owns the data in a smart city. Who owns it? Is the city? Is it you? Who owns that data? Is it the carrier? So I think we still need to we have a lot of work to do on the security side. And then the last thing is integration. How many people in the room today do integration work around IoT? Actually integrate. It's a challenge to understand how to put all those parts together and actually come out with a whole program. So that's something that I think is that needs to be addressed also. So we would not be here today without the cooperation of our sponsors, and I had to do this, right? That's part of my job, is to make sure that the sponsors are fully aware of how happy we are to have them. And this is a pretty good who's who's list of people in the industry that are committed to us and committed to this, to our group and being able to provide and this opportunity. So thank you to our sponsors, and you'll see this rotated during the day. I'd like to introduce my friend, my partner, my what are we? We're a lot of different things, aren't we? But James Brehm, and I'll let him tell you who he is, but James is respected within the industry as being one of the most amazing evangelists in the technology, understanding what the numbers are all about, what the market trends are all, and he will set the stage for the rest of the day, and hopefully you'll be around.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got it.
Thanks. So Steve said that just jump in at any time with questions. I'm going to have to blaze through this. I will be around, so please hold the questions until after and then grab me. But I'm more than happy to answer questions. So I'm going to fly through the first few slides. Just talk a little bit about myself and our company. We're a consulting and market intelligence firm, but what we really do is we try to help provide strategy acceleration for our clients. Help them get from point A to point B faster. They could be carriers, hardware providers, software providers, systems integrators, you name it, or could be enterprises looking to deploy and trying to deploy and make money out of this nonsense we call IoT. We do custom research, we do competitive analysis, we do go-to-market strategy work, but we've been working closely with Steve and his team for the past year and a half on various projects as well. These slides will be available as takeaways as well via PDF for everyone. So I'm just going to fly through kind of what our process is. We're a little bit different than most market research firms in the fact that we don't try and shortcut the process. You know, Gideon Gartner and IDC and guys like that have always tried to shortcut the process. Talk to 20% of the market and figure out what the other 80% is going to do and calculate it that way. We try and talk to as many people as we possibly can, keep the finger on the pulse of what's going on to understand truly where it's going to go, especially with as many acronyms as we have out there right now. What's really going on. And I think we're a little bit different than most because we're pragmatic. We don't believe, we investigate. Just because somebody says they're going to do something doesn't necessarily mean there's a good technological reason to do it and will get deployed. If it technologically won't work, there's not a business case for it. If there's not a business case for it, you shouldn't do it either. So you got to tie all those different things together to find out, is it going to work? And are we going to grow at the rates that people are saying we're going to grow at? And we're not, guys. We're not going to get to 50 billion. Let's just say it right now.
What number are we going to get?
A lot lower. 800 million. That's low. So today in the US, if we talk about paid for cellular, satellite, or low power wide area connections, we're looking at 67.5 million through Q2 in the United States. That does not include Wi-Fi, short range, or alternative technologies. These are paid for, subscribed to public network services. AT&T has the lion's share in the cellular space. The fastest growing in the last 2 years has been Sprint. But if you take a look at the industrial IoT space and we take a look outside of those areas and we add in unlicensed short range and we take a look at wireline, you can see that cellular is a fragment of the market. There's a lot of stuff out there that's already connected. But the one thing that's really unique to note, everybody's been talking historically about faster bandwidth. Now we're talking about low power stuff. The reason we're all talking about low power stuff is you take a look at it, and 75% of all the connected devices out there use less than a meg a month, right? And much of them, much less than that. So some of the mega trends driving this as well are things like globalization and the flattening of the world, right? People need to have things that work anywhere within the world. Cost pressures on hardware are driving things down. It's like we met Moore's Law, met Metcalfe's Law, and fell in love, right? So we got all these connected devices out there. We got cheaper and faster processors on the other end, and it's causing this tsunami approach. But when I think about the technology evolution, the increased legislation, things like the Food Safety Modernization Act driving us to have to implement cold chain solutions. That's why IoT is so important to us. It's not just about the next cool gadget like the Nest thermostat that Steve talked about. It's about saving lives. It's about reducing waste. About 60% of food perishes before when it gets harvested, before it gets to the table. Well, we got to end that stuff. I mean, the way our world is growing, we got to stop that now. So where are we at? If you want to take a look at where we're at in this cycle of where IoT is, we're still in an early adoption stage. Even though we've done, and I'll have some slides later on that show that we've done research and done surveys and we've asked enterprises, are you deploying or are you utilizing IoT? Everybody's raising their hand and saying yes. That's bull. I talked to a $98 billion industrial company yesterday who is just trying to figure out what their strategy is for IoT, right? All these guys that say they have a strategy, hope is not a strategy. You know, buying a big company for $1.5 billion in the platform space and bolting it on and saying that's your IoT strategy like Cisco did recently, that's not a strategy, right? There are companies out there that are taking a look at what do they do today and what do their customers want tomorrow, and they're making informed bets. There are, yeah, absolutely, there are some of them. I see PacSense sitting here in a room. They were just acquired by Emerson. One of the great stories of acquisition lately. And that's what I was going to talk about, is there's so much money out there in this space right now. Everybody's trying to flock into it. I can't walk through the show floor without having a private equity guy stop me and say, hey, can you help us? Because we got money to invest. Large enterprises have money to invest. We were talking this morning earlier in this room, and it was Apple and Google have more available cash than like 90% of the GDPs out there in the world combined. Available cash to put in this space. So companies are putting money into the technology space, and there are companies combining things, you know, and not all these things make sense. You know, some of the recent acquisitions are, you know, Core keeps getting bigger. They acquired Wireless and got that thing done. You know, Cisco acquired Jasper. We're not sure how that's going to work out. You know, SoftBank's investment in ARM is really intriguing to me, because here's a guy that has invested heavily in Sprint as well, has invested in Spectrum around the world, and now is almost a full stack owner of technology when this thing goes through. So that's kind of amazing. You know, the Verizon thing recently, acquiring Telogis and Fleetmatics for these ridiculous sums. But and then the big industrials are finally in the space, with Caterpillar acquiring M2M Data Corp to monitor oil and gas fields, for Emerson with some of the acquisitions that they're doing. And now Microsoft getting into the space, finally finding a group that's going to actually lead their IoT strategy. They said they had one before. Now they actually have somebody that has the title, head of IoT strategy. You know, and sometimes I think about this. I wanted to bring this up because I said there's a lot of money out there. So Verizon acquired these two companies, and they're going to have a 91 to 100 month payoff to break even. They're just, the valuations of private companies in this space are just so overboard, it doesn't make sense to me. And there's a lot of public companies that have been doing stuff for a long, long time that the valuations are much lower. Digi, Orbcom, CalAmp. You know, guys are doing that heavy lifting with industrial machine-to-machine stuff that's making money out there today. And who knows what's going to be next. But I want to talk a little bit about what enterprises need to think about and what members of the ecosystem need to think about when putting things together. And the first thing that I think about is, where do you start? You know, do you start with an application, or do you start in a vertical market, or do you start You have to take a look at what your strengths are, what your customers want, and what you need to do, and start vertically focused tightly, and then spread out and go horizontal. Because the decisions that need to be made are few and far, and many, are many. This is what we call the IoT stack. And if you miss one of these areas, and tying your application together and your solution together, you might stall for a little bit until you figure it out. If you miss 2, 3, 4 of these, you're going to fail. Your application is not going to hit. You have to have the ability to tie applications not on a platform with applications you've developed through an application enablement platform. But all the applications that you're going to be deploying don't necessarily have to be made through an application enablement platform. But you have to go through this thought process, and you have to have tight project management and systems integration work along the process. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to tie it to whoever's cloud services. You have to utilize containerization, because it is, at the end of the day, about the information, about the data, about the identity of the information and the truancy of the information. So what's first? Companies need to focus on, take a look at things that matter and things that you can control, and merge those two things together, and just right there. Be very, very tightly focused. Because, as I said, 73% of companies say that they're currently active in IoT. There's all enterprises out there. Very wide sampling of companies. People are saying we're in it. But labor productivity decreased. GDP growth only increased 1.1. Where are the fruits of that labor? They're not here yet. Companies may be exploring it, but are they active in IoT? We're wondering what the timeline's going to look like for people to get to that point. We're wondering what the questions are, because it's companies like Steve's and it's companies like ours that are trying to help our customers answer those questions. And you know, I think the biggest thing around here is I want everybody to take a look around the room, because that should be somebody you don't consider as a competitor. It's a partner, potential partner. IoT isn't about one company controlling the entire ecosystem. It's about having to be able to work with many outside. So.